We're going to move to our next. We're going to move to our next section here, which is what's your target. So, in other words, what's your delivery platform? Okay. It could be cinematic, and by cinematic I mean anything that's theatrical or film presentation, whether it be in some type of theatrical venue. Normally, that's going to dictate that you have to use something like a film projector, DC, some kind of DCI P3 workflow. Um, that could be 2K, 4K, IMAX, so on and so forth. Okay, so if you have to do that, that's going to involve some color grading. Okay, at the end of your workflow, so so latitude in your image is important. Most importantly, or most of the time, I would say that involves some type of linear workflow, and we're going to get into linear workflow in the second video. That's one way to really make set your renders apart, to adopt a linear workflow. Almost everyone I know calls that the right way to do things. I myself included firm believe that if you want to get really good imagery, you've got to use that linear workflow. So we'll cover that in the second video. But that again goes back to a couple panels before, when the first section, when we talked about the time taken to achieve your goal. And linear workflow is gonna interject some time. It's gonna demand some of your time. And you've got to make a decision on whether or not that is where you want to go. Okay. All right. Matching existing footage is important. Uh, if your existing workflow, as far as the workflow of the DP, editor, and color grader, is to use LUTs, you should really use LUTs. Okay. If they're using something like Sony's OC IO protocols, it would behoove you at that point to take advantage of that. Also with ASC/CDL color. We'll go into a little bit of what all those things are. We're not going to spend a lot of time on it, but we'll touch base, and we'll show you a couple things in the second video. Okay? Uh, that dictates at that point that you should get a color profile from your color grader if possible. I would do that as early as possible as you can, before you start on your project. If at all possible, if the color grader or the facility has done any kind of color profiles before the actual production starts, if you can get a hold of those, that'll put you in a great place. Quite often, a director, if he's worked with a DP before, they've already got some look and feel stuff set up. You could probably get that from the DP. He can give you some color, a color LUT. Quite often, most of the time, they have a LUT they already like to use. So it's really easy at that point to get something like that from those guys. You just have to kind of ask them respectfully. Don't take from their time. Don't intrude upon them. But the earlier you can get that stuff, the better. Okay. And if you're an independent filmmaker, a lot of times we often all wear a lot of hats. If that's something where you're the DP and the editor and the color grader, then hey, just make sure you provide yourself the animator and the CG artist. Make sure that you provide that stuff for yourself, and that way, if you've got a consistent workflow, you can kind of check your colors when you render. You can kind of make sure that your footage is going to match when you try to get it back in. Television, online, game, I think they speak for themselves. Some of the things that you see there are pretty consistent. Television, we've been using that for 100 years. Well, not 100 years. We've been using it for a lot less than that, but it's been defined. It actually is coming up on 100 years probably for television, but you got to legalize your colors. Rec 709 HD size. so on and so forth. Online, I'm sure we all know what that demands. And then game engine, if you're doing something specifically that's going to be integrated inside of an Xbox or some other kind of game engine, whether it be Flash, at that point you've got to adhere to whatever specifications your your direct platform is gonna ask for, gonna demand. Okay. Okay, so now we're kind of getting into it here. So our next panel here is called Design is Essential, okay? And I think we're really kind of getting into the foundational process here when we start talking about the importance of production design, okay? It is crucial to making sure that you're going to get what you want from your renders, what you want from your, from your work. First thing you want to try to do is use as much photo reference and as much color scheme to achieve the look you want before you begin to work. So you kind of want to outlay what you're trying to achieve before you start. As you can see on the left here, I kind of grabbed some snapshots that we used for profiling to try to make sure that we were getting the look that we wanted to achieve with our, look that we were trying to achieve with our model here. And as you can see, I intentionally added a model of Bumblebee from Transformers, and also gave you the appropriate kind of, the corresponding look that we used, a corresponding look that we used in the film, in the webisode. So as you can see, here's our Jerry robot, okay? And here's Bumblebee from the Transformers series, and they've kind of got the same pose going on, and we're able to see at that point how broad his shoulders are, the broadness of his shoulders, the look that he portrays when he's looking directly at something, and then how it matches up with our character, who we did grab a lot of the look and feel and a lot of the mannerisms from the Bumblebee character. But also we looked at other robots. We looked at the robots from Total Recall, who are really closely aligned to the things that we were trying to do, as far as they are a peacekeeping force. They are servitude robots. They were also used as a mechanized fighting force, which, for some of you guys who haven't seen the series, that becomes more and more the role of the robots in our universe, is that they are increasingly found out to be weapons of war and not necessarily something that's kind for mankind, that's a benefit to mankind, but more something that's going to be used to subjugate mankind. Okay? So you want to determine your lighting and material properties before you create shaders, okay? For example, good metal shaders make use of BDRF. And if you've ever seen an Iron Man, of course, most of you guys have seen Iron Man. In Marvel's universe, one of the things that made that material really stand out and really define itself as being metal was the ability for the metal to display certain properties, such as BDRF, okay? So one thing I would keep in mind is, okay, for instance, if your target is to make something of metal, you're going to make a robot, and it's going to be made up mostly of metal. You want to make sure that not only your renderer, but the shaders that work with that renderer make use of properties, such as BDRF, okay? Because that's going to give you the best shot to make sure you're getting what you want, okay? A renderer that is that is capable of displaying your object the way you want it, okay? Detail is important. You want to create imperfections at the level you need, okay? So, i.e., close-ups require small imperfections because you're going to zoom in on the character. You're going to see the character very large. So if you're going to see that character very large and it's going to be very close to the camera, you want to make sure that you interject those small imperfections because they're going to become visible when you do the close-up. Now, if your character is going to be, you know, seen as a mid-shot, like we see Bumblebee and the Jezebel robot here, maybe those small imperfections aren't important. But you want to know that beforehand. You want to make those decisions before you start, because those small imperfections have to be rendered just along with the large imperfections. They have to be rendered, and no matter how you achieve them, whether you achieve them with a normal map or a bump map, which we'll talk about in the second video, the differences between the two, that stuff's got to be rendered. So you don't want to interject time. You don't want to inject a workload onto your render or into your workflow that you don't need to do for shots that you're not going to do. Okay, if you're at you know, working for a studio, you know, that's something you're just going to normally do because they'd rather have that detail, and they'll pay for the render costs. They've got that factored into their budget. You as an independent filmmaker, you know, unless you guys are working with a good budget, you don't have that ton of time. You cannot waste the time rendering things that you're not going to see. Okay, so you want to make sure that you create imperfections at the level of detail that you need. Okay, so if you need mid shots, you want to make sure you get good imperfections in the mid shots. Okay. Find textures that display the properties you want in your asset. Okay, so if you've got a material that you've chosen, there's two ways of doing it. You could find, like here, we could have found a yellow metal or photographed a yellow metal that had the imperfections, the scratches, the dirt, readily available, and then Photoshop that in and use that to get what we wanted. We decided at that point that we'd start with a pristine or almost pristine natural yellow metal, and then we actually put the imperfections in and the properties in that we wanted. So there was parts here, as you can see on the breastplate, where we wanted imperfections. We didn't want the left breastplate to mimic the right breastplate. So we wanted to start with both of them perfect and then scuff them up and put the imperfections in and the properties of each on our own, which takes more time, but you make sure you get what you want. Okay, so that leads us to our last thing here. You want to promote non-symmetry. Okay, when this model, and I don't know the workflow of this model, and definitely not this model, but the workflow of this model, the modeler modeled symmetry. So each side of the Jezebel robot, and I'm looking at the Total Recall robot, I would assume both sides of this robot are symmetrical. You know, size of leg panels and things like that are equal on both sides. So if you go and you texture that evenly, then you're going to end up with a pretty blah blah image. You're going to end up with a blah blah object. And one thing that you definitely have to take into account is that nothing in nature is perfectly symmetrical. So there's nothing in nature that is equal for every part of it across an axis. So whether it be the x-axis, left and right, you know, there's not going to be two pieces that are exactly the same. The manufacturing process would try to get those two pieces to be as close to perfect as possible, but nature is going to interject at some point, and there's going to be some differences there. So what you want to do is make sure that you promote those differences to give your character some life, to make sure that your character's interesting, and the materials should have different stories. So what is the story of the lower breastplate or chest plate? What is that story? Well, how many times has he fallen on that side? How many times has he scuffed things up against him, or other people have scuffed against him? Since that is his left arm here, is he primary? Does he carry things with his right arm? So, how many times is that left breastplate been the place where he had to extend his arm if he fell or if he was brushed or hit? So what's the story we're going on with that material? And then conversely, what is the story going on with the other side? They can't be identical. Both pieces of those textures cannot have the same story. Okay, that just would not happen. If you were to look at your arms right now and look at your hands right now, your arms and your hands tell different stories. Different things have happened to one hand that didn't happen to the other. Okay, what you want to do is make sure that your textures tell stories. Okay, and make sure you tell each story. Make sure you're doing each side justice up until the level where you're gonna see what's going on. Okay. All right. Okay. So continuing on with production design. Okay. Um, if at all possible, the one thing you do want to do is involve an actual production designer or art director if you can. If your budget allows and you're at a point where you can hold that person over, or ask that person to spend a day maybe before production and just help you out. Um, you know, you want to do that. We were blessed on our web series to have someone who I collaborate frequently, and I love her work. And she's awesome at giving her time and also contributing to the whole entire process. Uh, so our work was done by Enda Blotch Guy, who's a wonderful production designer based out of Cleveland, Ohio. And Enda, did the set. She did the set designs. Okay, and Enda did the set designs for the webisode. She actually took our lobby. This is our lobby. If you look in the upper picture here, and she converted our lobby into a really kick-ass boutique. Okay, so much so we had some clients come in and try to. We actually rented out the space to a clothing store, and they wanted to purchase some of the items. She did such a fantastic job with that I think it really helped sell the second part of the web series that is located there. And she also did some few things in the restaurant that we were kind enough, Jezebel's restaurant, Jezebel's Bayou restaurant, excuse me, that was kind enough to let us use that space to shoot. She went in and actually worked really, really hard and really diligently to make sure that we promoted a look on film that that assisted us in telling the story. Okay. Well, along with that, you have to make sure that our robot fits in that space. He doesn't spend too much time in the boutique, but actually in the restaurant, he's based in the restaurant for the first 3 episodes. So we wanted to make sure that he not only did he go with the space, but that you as an audience member agreed and felt as though he was purchased by the proprietor of the restaurant, and that he was purchased and ordered, as if he was purchased to be in that restaurant. In our version of the future, these robots are buying one of these robots is akin to ordering a car, a General Motors car or a Ford car, and you actually would pick out color palettes. You'd get choices on colors, you get choices on fittings and accessories. So it made sense to us that the owner, that yellow color was derived from the fact that his logo colors are gold and purple, and so we wanted to make sure that color looked as if it was purchased and put into this environment by the owner. Okay, and I think she did a wonderful job of assisting us with that, because it gave us, and it gave myself a lot of time to see through her eyes what you know, what was gonna you know, be the look that would fit really well inside of what she planned to do. So she brought a color chip book. She had some pictures and photographs, and it just helped immensely. So what I would say is, at the end of the day, if you can get a production designer, go for it. If you get an art director and somebody that can help you to do that, that's where you want to go with it. Okay. Well, okay. We've gotten to the end of this section, and we're going to move on to the next section, and we're going to talk about some color more in depth in the next session. So I'll see you over there.